everyone, and welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. Today is Friday, September 12th here on the podcast, and we are getting into all things first round of the playoffs. The regular season is officially behind us, and we are into playoff WNBA basketball, which is so exciting. And there's a lot to talk about. So we're going to hit that, and then we're going to hit into a few WNBA awards discussions. I'm joined by Richard Cohen. He just released a article over on herhoopstats.com, just kind of going through his picks for the various awards in the WNBA, with the caveat that neither of us have an official vote. So, don't be counting our opinions into the actual voting process. But we thought it would be fun to just come on here in the little break between the regular season and the playoffs and just kind of get all of this out there before we start getting into, intense playoff talk next week. So, Richard, how's it going over on the other side of the pond?
Yeah, glad the regular season's over, and now we can start with the games that actually matter.
Exactly. We are getting into playoff basketball. This is when it all counts and it all matters. The playoffs just ended last night, and seeding implications were going on literally until the last game. And so we finally know what these matchups are going to be, which is so exciting. The playoffs start on Sunday, September 14th, so literally in 2 days. If you're on the West Coast, get ready to watch basketball real early in the morning because the first game starts at 10 a.m. Pacific time on ESPN, and then then you just continue for the whole day. So make sure you have multiple screens going. Make sure you have your various sports logged up. The good thing is that it doesn't seem like any of these games will overlap unless there's overtime in some situations. But I think that for the most part they'll kind of wait for the other game to finish before they go in. So Richard, we're going to start with these playoff matchups before we get into award talks. Just starting with Sunday's games and just kind of going through and figuring out, who we think is going to win, what we think is going to be the biggest, factors in these games, and if we could see any upsets potentially. So let's just start right in the morning if you're on Pacific time. Neither of us are. The game starts at 1 p.m. for me. And at a decent time for you, given that you're, in the UK.
Yep. People can actually watch this without staying up through the middle of the night if they wanted
there
to.
You go. Yeah. Exactly. So, if you're, over in Europe, congrats. So this game is the 1-8 matchup, which is the Minnesota Lynx versus the Golden State Valkyries. This will be in Minnesota. So game one for all of these series is going to be in the higher seed arena. Then they're going to travel for game two to the lower seed arena. And then if they need a game three, they will go back to the higher seed. And this was kind of put in place this season. It's new to make sure that every team in the playoffs at least has one home game opportunity. And this was after the whole thing last year with Indiana not having a home playoff game. But we have Golden State at Minnesota for the first round. They just played last night too, which was like a fun little preview into what could be happening. But Richard, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, it was an interesting situation where they were sort of playing, if we beat you, we get to play you Sunday and into the rest of the first round. Yeah. I think Minnesota will be pretty happy with the matchup that they've managed to win themselves into. I think they would rather have played Golden State than Seattle. Yeah. They've beaten Golden State 4 times already this season. And they're going to be strong favorites going into the first round.
Yep.
But we've watched Golden State all year win games they're not supposed to win. And
exactly.
Keep staying above water regardless of what's happened. They're going to the best team in the league. They're not getting to play their home game in game 2 in Valhalla.
Yeah. Not at Chase Center. It was
clearly when they were organizing the schedule, no one was expecting the Valkyries to make the playoffs. But
they did. Yeah. That shows you not to do that next time.
So that's unfortunate for Golden State because we've seen the atmosphere they've had at Chase Center all season, and it would have been fun to see a playoff game held in that arena.
Yeah.
But now they're going to have to cause a first-round upset in order to get one in the second round. I think Golden State might steal a game because we've seen them we've seen them go 500 or better all season long and
Yep.
keep their heads above water. But it would be a massive shock if the Valkyries managed to win the series.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be fun. I would like this series to go to 3 just because it would be fun to see Golden State win one and the hype. And I mean, despite the fact that their home game is going to be in San Jose as opposed to in Chase Center where they're usually playing, I feel like, hopefully the team makes an effort to bring fans out there to make sure that the stadium or the arena is still packed, to still make it a good atmosphere, the one that they've been able to build in their first year, which has been really impressive. And I think it would just be fun to see them steal a game and kind of make Minnesota a little stressed and have them bring it back to game 3 at Target Center in Minnesota. So yeah, I think it would just be fun, but I agree with you. I do think Minnesota kind of has this one, booked. And I mean, hopefully they don't think that as a team and they don't kind of let off the gas at all. And they still play hard and they still treat this like any other series. But at the same time, I mean, it's hard to think about this Golden State Valkyries team beating a team as good as Minnesota when you have someone like Nafisa Collier, when you have, Natisha Heidemann has been playing really great. You have, Kayla McBride, you have, Alana Smith, you have all of these players that are coming in, and not only are they good individually, but their chemistry is just out of this world. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say our guesses for Minnesota winning this series aren't, out of anyone's.
No, I don't think we're going out on a limb with that
Yeah.
one. No, if you forced me to pick the series, I'd take the Lynx to win 2-0 because they've beaten Golden State 4 times this season.
Yeah.
And Golden State did not hit anything from outside last night. So
yeah, that was rough. I was watching it. I was like,
we know they take a lot of threes, and sometimes you get hot. So maybe that can happen, especially in a short series. We're still playing best of threes, which means the possibility for freak results is still higher than it would be with a longer series where you have more room for error if you screw up one game or someone gets hot.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I hope that my name twin Carla Leite can come out and make a big impact for them, but yeah, we'll see. But let's move on to the second game, which is at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, whatever time that is in England. I don't know. But then we have Indiana versus Atlanta. Indiana somehow kind of squeezed in and got the 6th seed, but they still have to play Indiana, who got the 3rd seed in that little tussle with Las Vegas and Phoenix and all of that. So this is going to be an interesting series. I mean, if it was full strength, I think it would be a little bit of a different conversation. If Caitlin Clark was coming back, I think it would be a little bit of a conversation. But Caitlin Clark is out. She's not going to be playing for the rest of the season, regardless of how far Indiana gets. They also have, a ton of injuries down the line. Sophie Cunningham, Ari McDonald, Sid Colson, those players that they would turn to in playoff moments to kind of give those big moments and those big, shots. I mean, Sophie Cunningham is kind of known for being that, like, you need a shot down the line in a big game, she can kind of give it to you. And then Atlanta, on the other hand, has just been so strong all season. They have Carl Smesko, who, everybody is talking about as this really great, really mastermind coach. I'm excited to see what he brings to the postseason. But then you also have players that kind of know this moment. You have Brittany Griner, who's won a WNBA championship with Phoenix. You have Brianna Jones, who has played with Connecticut and, has been to the playoffs time and time again. And then you have their young stars like Ryan Howard. I mean, Alicia Gray has been playing fantastic this season. And so they really have the potential to impress people in this playoff series. But I'm curious, do you think Indiana can kind of like rise above the injuries that they've had and maybe get out of the first round?
I think Indiana are still an interesting playoff team in that they've played pretty well without Clark and have improved as the last few weeks of the season have gone on. They've they cemented that playoff spot when it looked like it might be a battle at the bottom of the schedule. They clinched it a little earlier than looked like they were going to. The problem might be sort of the number of weapons they have left at this point. The numbers have dwindled, and Atlanta are going to lean their defense towards Kelsey Mitchell a lot and then towards Boston inside. And somebody else is going to have to step up. They're going to have to get a big game from Natasha Howard or Lexi Hull's going to have to hit 5 threes in one game. Somebody's going to need to do something special besides that big two, because that's not going to be enough with the amount of defensive focus that will be on them from Atlanta.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's impossible for those things to happen. I think Lexi Hull can, score 5. Yeah. We've seen it. We've seen her do it before, right? Like 5 threes in a game. Kelsey Mitchell can turn it on, and Aaliyah Boston has shown that she's so dominant. But, I mean, then you're going up against Brittany Griner and Brianna Jones, who are two of the most prolific post players in the entire league. This one I do think will go to 3 games. I do think that Indiana might have the juice to win their home game. And I mean, they have a great home playoff atmosphere. I think that the fans will still show up, despite the fact that Clark won't be playing, but she'll definitely be on the sidelines, coaching her teammates from the bench. So I do think Indiana may make it interesting.
And Atlanta don't necessarily have the best home court advantage in the league themselves. Yeah. So if it went to a 3rd game, maybe the advantage in that decider might not be as big as it would be for some of the other teams without upsetting any of the Atlanta fans who might be listening. But
exactly. Yeah. I saw I think, and I don't remember which Atlanta reporter it was, but I saw an Atlanta reporter this morning kind of say, like, if there were any possibility of them moving to the bigger arena, they can't, because on Sunday, Dua Lipa is in Atlanta doing a concert. And so, unfortunately, that bigger arena, the one that the Atlanta Hawks play in, is unavailable. And so they will play at their regular arena, which only has a capacity, I think, of like 3,000, which is super, super low when you think about, I mean, the thing that I can compare it to is that the Toronto Temple will have somewhat of a smaller arena, but they still have about 9,000 capacity for their arena. And then the bigger arenas that teams often share with NBA teams and NHL teams sometimes have upwards of 15 to 18,000 capacity. And so their 3,000 arena isn't exactly the most intimidating space to go in and play in.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, we've seen Clark fans show up around the league. Exactly. So even without her there may be quite a few Indiana fans showing up in Atlanta. So
that's true.
If it goes to a 3rd game, then that might be one that at least an upset is possible, even if I think it's fair to say the higher seed, with maybe the exception of the 4-5, depending on how you feel about that, are going to be the favorites in each of these series.
Yeah.
So it's just a sort of a matter of how reasonable you think the upset possibility is across 3 games.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the 4-5, that's the next.
There's your segue.
Coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern on Sunday is really the series that I think most people are going to be lasered in on for the first round, which is New York versus Phoenix, the 4-5 matchup. These two teams that, I mean, the storylines are there. You have New York, reigning champions, slip to the 5th seed, injuries, et cetera, versus the Phoenix Mercury, who have Alyssa Thomas, Kalia Copper. But I think the biggest thing is, like, Sabrina Ionescu is back for the Liberty, and they're kind of, hopefully full strength going into this series. And they got a lot to prove, because they, they're trying to go back to back. But on the other hand, you have Phoenix. Alyssa Thomas has been so close to winning a championship and never has. Kalia Copper hasn't won since Chicago. You have Satu Sabli, who's in there. And then just their very impressive, signings that they've had all year. But this one's interesting because Phoenix is technically the higher seed and they have the advantage. But, I mean, on paper, New York is the better team.
Yeah, I mean, this New York team was the number 2 team behind Minnesota for most of the season, until the late swoon and the number of injuries that they picked up.
Yeah,
I kept saying that I thought they'd prioritize getting healthy over which seed they ended up with, and they did that, and now they are healthy. The question is whether you can kind of find the chemistry at the last moment without having had the squad together for most of the last 2 months of the season, because this group as a whole hasn't played that many games together.
About Meesman signing and all of that.
And the last couple of games, Brondello, it's felt like, was sort of trying to work out what her playoff rotation is going to be, because she's got 12 good players. So at that point you have to work out who's actually going to play because she's not going to use all 12.
No.
So, I mean, Maureen Johannes barely played outside of garbage time the last couple of games. Sort of players like that may end up on the outside, and then, yeah, whether it all fits together for New York is going to be interesting. And yeah, Phoenix have to try and take advantage of what is in front of them.
Yeah, and I mean, that depth will definitely come in handy for New York because one, the thing is, if you again knock on wood, you don't want this to happen, but I mean, I have wood back here. We'll knock on that, but you don't want more injuries to happen. But if you do, you kind of have this depth to be able to add people into her 9-player rotation. That's usually kind of the standard for playoffs. But at the same time, if you saw her do this last year where Courtney Vandersloot wasn't exactly giving everything that they needed in the regular season. And so going into the playoffs, they switched and put Leonie Fibish in the starting lineup. And that ended up being such an important part to their lineup. And so I think if Sandy Brondello kind of has this idea of what she wants to do, but isn't afraid to change it when she needs to, I think that will be really important to adapting to like the ebbs and flows of the playoffs, which is important. But I think what really comes in with this team is that so many of them have experience. Like, Brianna Stewart has now won 3 championships. You have the ones that were there last year who have won a championship. Natasha Cloud has won a championship. Emma Miesemann is just incredible. She's won a championship and she's won all over the world. And so they just have that experience that comes in. And I think that will help them build chemistry because they all know what they need to do in order to win. And they also have options. I think I'd rather, if I were Sandy Brondello, have options to go to instead of not having the depth, say like Las Vegas has struggled with this season, of not having enough of those like playoff caliber players to go into. So I don't know, like if you asked me to pick the series, I think I would pick New York. And I don't know if that's just like, again, like on paper, I think they're better. I think, they have the benefit of having won last year, but it is very hard to go back to back. And they just they have the depth that Phoenix doesn't have.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to come together at the last moment when you haven't been cohesive for that long beforehand. I think we've seen this a lot of the time before in other leagues, in this league as well, where sort of teams are sitting around waiting to try and get healthy for the playoffs, sort of thinking that we just need to be healthy at the right time. And then it's hard because you haven't got that built-in group together. You don't know exactly what you are going in at the right time, and you just don't have time to come together in the playoffs. But like you say, there is a lot of talent here. There's at some point the talent overwhelms anything else. And New York have built such a squad that they're going to be hard to beat because you can throw the ball to Jonquel or to Brianna or to Sabrina, and it's hard to defend a team like that. It's going to be interesting how either side works the matchups because the primary question against Phoenix is who guards Alyssa Thomas. I would guess Brianna Stewart starts on her as the 4 and kind of in those lineups, but New York can go to a lot of different setups. Phoenix can shift Thomas to 5 rather than the 4, in which case does Jonquel Jones have to take her? Does Emma Miesemann have to try and stay in front of Thomas? So then it gets interesting because Phoenix are so fluid, so flexible with players like Sabally and Copper playing off Thomas, where a lot of players can switch, a lot of players can play in different positions. So then it becomes the chess match between the two coaches, and we see how everyone reacts to it, what everyone else is trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something that is important to know is that so on herhoopstats.com, we have the regular season stats, but we also have the playoff stats. And going in, I mean, Sabrina Ionescu was scoring 16 points per game last year in the playoffs. And I think that's so important to think about someone like her who's able to step up during these big moments. She was, the person who was making so many of those big shots in that Minnesota series. And so having someone like her who can step up in these big moments, I think is really, really important to a team's chances.
Yeah, I mean, they've got plenty of players who won't shy away from the moment. So, if they need someone to take the big shot, they got lots of players who'll take it. I mean, Stewart's been struggling from 3 for the last couple of years, but all she's done when she's been healthy this year is translate that into well, in that case, I'm going to get to the basket,
Yep,
and you're either going to foul me or I'm going to score, or both. So
exactly.
yeah, when she's been healthy, she's still been good this year. It's just getting the whole group together.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to the last matchup of Sunday, which is Seattle versus Las Vegas, which is interesting because I feel like these teams keep meeting each other in the playoffs. It's been the first round matchup for the past few years, and traditionally Vegas has kind of taken it. But this is interesting because it's the 2-7 matchup, and I think that Seattle is better than a 7 seed. Like they're on paper, they're better than what their season ended up being. And I mean, when you flip over to Vegas, they were kind of down in that ranking for a while and then won the last 16 games of the season consecutively, and now we're just like peaking at the right time. So I think it's such an interesting matchup to think about if Seattle can kind of come in and break the streak that the Aces are having, or if the Aces are just on such a roll that nothing is going to stop them right now.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle are definitely better than a typical 7 seed. If you look
Yeah.
at Pythagorean record, there's only one game between them in terms of projected
Mhm.
record for what they get on net rating. It's Seattle are a fascinating team because when they're rolling, when they're in flow and things are clicking, this is a
Yeah.
very dangerous team that can beat anyone. When things don't work, they can get blown out by anyone, and we've seen it multiple times this year. Vegas are rolling. Obviously, you
Yeah.
win. Is it 16? I think they've won in a
Yep.
row going into the playoffs, which is absurd. And yeah, I mean, I think Vegas have to be considered reasonably comfortable favorites just because of how strong they've been the last 2 months of the season.
Yeah.
But Seattle are a dangerous 7 seed in that they can turn it on. They'll threaten with their defense. They'll be aggressive as
Yeah.
they've been all the time. They'll
Yep.
try and jump the lanes. They'll crowd Wilson and dare someone else to beat them.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Vegas should come out on top. We'll see
Yeah.
where Seattle can try and hurt them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's kind of switch gears now and talk about end of season awards because that is obviously all the rage right now. We don't have time to go through every single pick that you've made in your entire newsletter. So if you're listening to this and you want to see Richard's picks, make sure to head to herhoopstats.com. I'm going to assume that Brian, our producer, is going to put the link to the thing in to the article in our description here. So if you are listening on whatever platform, just head down to our description, click the link, and read this article for yourself. But let's get into a few of maybe the most talked about awards and why you decided to pick who you picked. I'm going to start with Coach of the Year because that has been a very interesting conversation. And it almost seems like Natalie Nakase has kind of run away with, the consensus of who's going to win this award. And that's who you picked. So go kind of give us a little brief of why Natalie Nakase is your Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I went chalk with that. I think that has, as you say, that has become like kind of the consensus pick. It's I the coach of the year generally goes to people who exceed expectations, and I
Hmm.
don't think there is much more you can do to exceed expectations than lead an expansion team to being over 500 and make the playoffs. That you're just not supposed to do that. Expansion teams finish with 5 wins, and everyone says, "Oh, it's nice that they tried hard," and, and that's about it. But instead, they've kept rolling. They've had so many injuries, so many absences that people don't talk about because they've carried on playing to the same level pretty much all year, regardless of who got hurt or who was missing. And I mean, Tiffany Hayes hasn't played the last month, and no one's noticed because they found Kayla Charles off the street, and now she's starting. And they carried on. It
Oh
doesn't
my
it
god.
hasn't mattered. This is the job Nakase's done, and I mean until Vegas started turning it around at the end of the season, people were starting to say that maybe Nakase was the brains in Las Vegas, and Hammond was just sort of the passenger along for the ride, and now she'd lost the person who'd been doing all the real work behind the
Oh
scenes.
my god. Oh, that's wild. I definitely agree with you. I think Nakase has really proved that she is a great coaching mind. I think that she's also really led her team really well and helped them just kind of block out the outside noise and the narratives that people are trying to put on them as an expansion team. I mean, it's interesting to think like this is the first expansion team out of what will be 6 total in the next like few years, and so yeah, when you think about these teams that are coming up, especially next year with Portland and Toronto, like big shoes to fill when you think about how much they have really impacted the league. And I mean, not to say that everybody's expecting Toronto and Portland to make the playoffs. I mean, I'm not even expecting that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you know where my allegiances lie. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting kind of different narrative of like what an expansion team can be, and like I think it also has shown that there's so much talent in the WNBA that just wasn't being used properly, and why expansion was so important, because when you think about the players that she was able to get, it was all of those fringe players who would either be on the edge of rosters, who would make training camps and then not make the team because there just wasn't enough spots, and she wasn't able to pick really any of the league's starting players because they were all protected. Even when they picked their core unrestricted free agent, they picked Monique Billings, who was a great player, but again was a fringe kind of roster player for a lot of years. And yeah, I'm so impressed with the way that she's led this franchise in their first season. And not just that, like I don't think she's getting the award because everybody's like, oh, like you did so good, like good job. I think like she's actually coached extremely well, and I think she's actually just like really proven that that these players are good players and they deserve to be in this league. So yeah, I definitely agree with the spot, and I think it's interesting, and all of those things about Vegas were just kind of making me laugh, especially given that there was such a big conversation like mid-season about Becky Hammon lost 2 of her top coaches in Tyler Marsh and Natalie Nakase, and like look where Vegas is now. And then they got like thoroughly embarrassed by the Minnesota Lynx, and I guess that was what they needed to kind of turn their season around, because that was the last game that they lost before they've gone on this absolutely wild run. But yeah, I think she's a great candidate for it. I think she's a really great coach, and this team's just going to get better. Like when you think about the way that they're now I think they're going to be a huge free agency hub. When you think about this season, 80% of the league are going to be free agents. They have it all. They have great facilities. They have a great coaching staff. They have a vision, and it's just going to be like, hey, what can we do from here to build? And she's been a huge part of setting them up for success for next year. But when we think about young people, young players, let's kind of switch into the rookie of the year conversation, because for a while it was kind of up in the air, but it definitely solidified in July and August. And you picked Paige Beckers, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone. But what about Paige really set her ahead of, say, someone like Sonia Citron for you?
I think Beckers has just been too good to ignore, and that she's an elite scorer from both outside and especially the mid-range game. Has been a joy for the purists who've decided that they always love the mid-range jump shot, even if it's not the most efficient shot in the game. She runs the team. She's taken ownership of that Dallas team, even with the obvious presence of Arike there. The injury opened that up, but it was still already happening even before that. Citron has had a great season and would win Rookie of the Year in a lot of seasons, but I think Beckers is just a step above. And the only reason really that you can offer to try and get them closer together is the number of games Beckers has missed. And I don't think 8 is enough, because it's been 1 or 2 here and there each time, but it's not enough to close that gap for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like last year when you were thinking about like Angel Reese and how, like, again, in any other season she would probably be the unanimous Rookie of the Year, but she just happened to be drafted in the same year as Caitlin Clark, who had a fantastic rookie season, broke a lot of records. But another award conversation that I think has been super interesting has been Sixth Player of the Year. I think that one's a really interesting one, given sometimes being a sixth player is a little bit ambiguous because you're kind of that fringe starter player. Depending on injuries, you might get slotted into the starting lineup every once in a while. But usually the sixth player is like that lead bench person, the person who's coming off your bench and really just holding down the fort while your starters are out, or even just like being able to be slotted into any position, whether that's a starter, whether that's on the bench, whether you're an injury replacement, yada, 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 whether you're playing, whether you're the first person off the bench or you play a little bit later, et cetera, et cetera. And there's been a few, I think, really great candidates this year. One being Natisha Heidemann, who has really played really great for Minnesota, especially in the past month. Her 3-point percentage has been incredible. You think about, Sammy Whitcomb. You think about DeWanna Bonner, you mentioned, Kennedy Burke, Kayla Thornton. After she was taken away, Kennedy Burke kind of stepped into that. Dominique Malonga is another one, despite being a rookie, was kind of inserted into the lineup. But the one that you landed on is Naz Hillman in Atlanta. And this one is interesting to me. I think I would have gone back and forth a little bit between Natisha Heidemann and Naz Hillman, but kind of explain why Naz Hillman gets the edge here.
I think when we came into the season, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen in Atlanta with sort of their post rotation, and especially with the new system under Semesco. And whether Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner could play together, whether that would work. And Hillman just sort of very quickly proved to Semesco that she deserved more minutes than she was getting, and kind of became the de facto sort of starter even without starting games. She was already getting starters minutes, because whether you watched the games or looked at the advanced stats, it was clear pretty fast that their better lineups were with Hillman at the 4 and only one of those two sort of big price additions playing at center. So I think, she proved that she was necessary and valuable on that team. And then you can't really, it means she didn't stay as a sixth woman. So you can argue that sort of it means that maybe it makes her less a part of this award or less natural for this spot. But yeah, she was basically too good. And once Griner got hurt and she came in, the lineup never changed back, because that's basically what it should have been to begin with. And a lot of talk has been about her 3-point shot and how much that has changed her game and has opened things up for Atlanta. But she does a lot of other things as well, in terms of adding the mobility and sort of the speed and the physicality that you get from a 4 like her, rather than just having two bigs and trying to work out how to fit two centers together into a lineup. So I think, she's done a really important job for Atlanta this season, and that's part of why they've been so good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's move on to the last conversation we will have that may effectively get you canceled, but let's see how this goes.
It wouldn't be the first time.
So let's talk about MVP, because I mean, of course, it's going to be the one that's most highly talked about, especially in a year where it's close. I mean, last year, it was A'ja Wilson. Nobody really argued about it. Nobody really had anything to say about it. It was her. I mean, she played incredibly. This year, on the other hand, it's more of a two-player race, as we talk about A'ja Wilson and Napheesa Collier, who, I mean, Napheesa Collier, I think, has just had such an incredible run in the past, 13, 14 months. When you think about the way that she was able to kind of bring Minnesota into the championship conversation last year. She got a spot on the Olympic team. They make it to the finals. She goes to Unrivaled, which, I mean, a lot of people aren't really going to count Unrivaled in this great run that she's had. And I'm not saying they should count Unrivaled for, her MVP. We're not talking about that, but she played incredibly in Miami. I mean, she dominated the league that she created, which was kind of hilarious. Then she comes into this WNBA season and continues that. And it's like, wow, she's just been playing this hard for over a year. And I mean, obviously, when we're talking about MVP, we're just talking about this season. But I also just don't want to discredit the fact that she's been playing really consistently, which is fantastic. And I mean, she's just up there with now, she's in that conversation for top players in the league. But it's interesting because we have this kind of again, consensus group thought about who is MVP or who is coach of the year or whatever. And when the season started, just given the fact that the Aces weren't playing as well, it's not that Asia Wilson was playing bad, but she wasn't playing as well as she was playing last season. Then you have Nafisa Collier playing this well. People kind of put in their heads like, okay, Nafisa Collier is the MVP. She's having this MVP run. But then Asia Wilson comes in the back half of the season and just like smashes a bunch of records, plays incredibly, has a bunch of these like 30-point games, has that 30-20 double-double, all of this stuff, and just like catapults herself into the actual MVP conversation. So now it's like kind of a battle of, okay, if you pick Nafisa, are you just kind of going along with this group thought, or do you actually think that she's had a better season than Asia? Or, if you're picking Asia, is it, because, X, Y, or Z? There's just so many factors that go into it. And they intentionally make these awards really ambiguous so that you don't have like a set player winning every single year. Because if they said it was in order to win MVP, you had to do this, this, and this, then I think it would be the same, player or kind of player every year. And so they make it ambiguous so that nobody really knows what an MVP is. And it's just kind of up to interpretation. So, all of that being said, go into a little bit of what your thought process was in picking your MVP. And again, just to put this out there, Richard doesn't have a real vote. Don't come for him. This is just him kind of, shooting the whatever. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on our podcast, but he's just kind of, he's riffing. So don't come in his mentions and be mean. But what went into your choice for MVP?
I mean, Richard would like a good an official vote, by the way.
Yeah, if they're giving them out, I mean,
I'm available if the league wants to talk to me. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if you mentioned it in there somewhere, but I picked Collier in the end.
I was letting you say it. I was going to let you say it.
I think the general consensus has become Wilson in the last sort of few weeks. That I think Wilson has become the betting favorite and the more common pick if you look around what a lot of people are writing in the last week or so.
Yeah.
I feel like Collier is the player who has more dominated the season in terms of being the presence that sort of that feels like the most important character to remember from sort of the storyline of the 2025 season.
Yeah.
And for me, that kind of let me pick her when it was, to me, it's close between 3 rather than 2, even though the 2 has become the debate. I think Alyssa Thomas is right there with Wilson and Collier for what she's done in Phoenix. But yeah, I feel like the central figure of the overarching season is more Collier than Wilson, despite Wilson has absolutely had an incredible season. I don't feel like anyone's wrong if they pick any of the 3. Yeah. Whereas some years I'm more definitive that people are wrong if they're making a pick that isn't the same pick that I make. This year there are several awards where I don't think there's a wrong answer amongst a whole lot of options. But I think the main argument against Collier, although you don't necessarily have to use it if you just think Wilson's been the better player, is the missed games. Whether you think the 11 missed games that Collier's had, which is a quarter of the season, even though we're playing a lot more games now total, whether that is enough. That I think Wilson ultimately played 40. So yeah, whether that makes the key difference between the 2, and that pushes you towards Wilson. But yeah, I felt that Collier had played enough that I still wanted to pick her at the top. I had Wilson second and Thomas third.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, like you said. Like, I don't think anybody is wrong for picking any of the 3. I mean, they are all so good, and I think they're different players. Like, I think the biggest thing is that they all kind of play that front court-ish. I mean, Alyssa Thomas is more of a point forward. Asia Wilson's more of like a post-dominant player. But they have different attributes, and they have different ways that they dominate the game. And I think it's just like, it's really exciting to be in this era where there's so many good candidates and we're having these fierce debates. But yeah, you're right. I think all 3 of them have a case, and all 3 of them have a reason to. I'm very curious to see, because again, it's not like you just pick one person. You do a ranking, and the rankings matter for points. And I mean, that year that Brianna Stewart won in, I think, 2023,
And Thomas had more first place
more first place votes, and it was because more people. It was just the way that the points and the weight of the points and the rankings kind of worked out, so that Stewart won, and then Asia Wilson ended up in third, and there was that fourth place vote, and it was just a whole thing. So yeah, it's just interesting. I'm excited to see where people's rankings lie. I'm excited to see, who ends up winning, and I think that yeah, it's definitely. I don't think it's gonna be pretty when it comes to no matter who gets it. I don't think it's gonna be pretty, but it will be interesting. So, regardless, if you're interested in reading more about Richard's picks, and he goes into everything from all WNBA defensive player, all that stuff. We could talk about it, but we don't have time. So you can go and find that on herhoopstats.com and our newsletter. Make sure to subscribe to make sure those newsletters get put into your inbox every single day. And then you can also have access to all of our incredible stats, including players' playoff stats, which is very important as we get into this part of the season, because some players just turn it on for the postseason. But yeah, we'll be back Monday on the Her Hoop Stats podcast to talk about all of the first games that happen on Sunday, and we'll break down, who has the best chance now of winning these series, and who, may have done an upset, and all of that fun stuff on Monday. So make sure to tune in for that. And if you're watching here or listening, make sure to subscribe to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. We do podcasts Monday to Friday. So check those out. Thank you so much for joining me, Richard, today to talk about your picks and potentially be roasted online. Always a fun time. But yeah, for this week of the podcast, I'm Chelsea Leite. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week.